When I was listening to Atishi, I felt very positive. Now I was listening to Prithvi and I'm feeling very sad. So it's like a pendulum of emotions. I'm going to come to you with that sad emotion, right, Atishi? So my dear friend Jyoti very beautifully articulated the education problem. It's like a snake swallowing its own tail, right? Um, More so now, the pandemic has made it worse or has revealed how bad it is, right? How, to your mind, I mean, it's very wicked and complex and overwhelming. But you've had some experience working on it. How do you intervene? How do you decide where to intervene in such a overwhelming problem? And I have two more parts to that question, which are connected, which is, the third wave might be imminent. I'm sure the Delhi government has some short-term measures to overcome, the current crisis, offline, online, opening schools, all of that, maybe. I'd really like to hear more about that. But in the long term, has this pandemic in any way, while it has been a crisis, has it also revealed opportunities, to make things better, to make things sustainable in the long run, looking at how volatile our world is and it's probably going to remain? Thanks.
So I think there is no doubt about the fact that the COVID pandemic, the lockdowns that have been associated with it, have caused a grave learning crisis. And I think that, again, going back to the panel just before ours, I think that a lot of the gains that were made in the last 20 years, I think from the early 90s, you have campaigns like the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, which talked about these entire school chale hum, getting children to school. In the early 90s, you had approximately 60% of the child population going to school. By the time of the pandemic, we would have had, by about 2020, more than 95% of the child population going to school, which are huge gains. By this time, we were all beginning to talk about a different kind of question, about learning outcomes. What are children learning in schools? How do you improve the quality of government schools? How do you improve training of teachers? How do you teach first-generation learners? This is the education narrative that we have been building. All of a sudden, with COVID, it's almost as if we are back by 10, 15 years. Because with education coming online, it has really revealed the fault lines that exist. That the haves and the have-nots, the gap was always there. The gap was there between the private schools and the government schools. But the access to technology, the access to laptops, the access to smartphones, the access to broadband connections. You have children studying my sister has children studying in a private school in Delhi. And each of the children, one is in class 8, one is in class 7, one is in class 3. Both of them have their own laptops. They both have their own plug-in wireless lines. And they can sit in 2 separate rooms during the time when they have classes. Most children do not have that kind of access. There might be one device in the home. Usually that device belongs to the father, might not be available at all times of day. Broadband connection is out of the question, and we know how volatile the data connections are. And so you have very limited access that most students have had. And I think that this is in Delhi. I shudder to imagine what other parts of the country are like. And so in this situation, I think all the solutions that we have been finding, I can share some of the things that we have been doing in Delhi. So yes, we have been having online classes for some of the older students. But to resolve this question of lack of access, we have been using multiple mediums. Especially for younger children, for primary classes, we have used a lot of what are voice recorded messages. So especially activities for language learning, for English, for Hindi, have been sent as voice messages. So you send small stories that the parents can listen to, that they can make their children listen to. Then you send another voice message or an SMS that has some questions related to that. The second thing that we have been trying is for children who cannot access online classes, you have at certain times of day, teachers take students on a conference call on their phones and clear their doubts, discuss what has been discussed in the classroom. A third method that we have been using is worksheets. That we have been, for every week, preparing worksheets that the teachers can give to the students, the parents can come to the school and take the worksheets. So the intention is that we keep the learning going by some means or the other. And I think that the pandemic has revealed this fault line where, at least in Delhi, parents feel confident that if they do not have the money to pay the fees of private schools, they feel confident that they can withdraw their child from a private school and send them to a government school. Now the crisis is even bigger in other parts of the country where parents are not able to pay fees. But given the state of government schools, they do not even have the confidence that they can withdraw their child and send them there. And I think this is the crisis that the entire country is facing. And I think COVID has basically exposed the fault lines that always existed. What are the answers to this? I do not know. I mean, we are working out a plan currently about how we can provide either tablets or small laptops to the older students, especially those studying in class 10 and class 12. And we are in process of working out those solutions. But I think that there are no easy answers to this question because we live in a very, very, very deeply unequal society. And I think that bridging this gap is something that the classroom was trying to do. And now that the COVID situation has shut down the classroom, it is not an easy gap to bridge. Yes, of course, definitely from now on, a lot more technology is going to be used. We, however, have come up with some solutions that are not just technological. We have been trying in this phase to have a lot of community-based mobilization that can help at least create education champions within the community. Earlier, we were trying to create them in the school. Now we have shifted to trying to create them in the community. We have, over the last 1 year, piloted something called the mentorship program, where we have called upon youth from the city who are studying in colleges, who are doing jobs, to actually mentor students who are studying in class 11 and 12, call them once a week, guide them about their studies, guide them about their careers. And we are planning to expand this on a much larger scale to all students from grade 9 to 12. And maybe we'd urge you also, because we are opening this out maybe in a few weeks to young people from all across the country who want to come and mentor students from Delhi government schools and can do so over the phones and video calls. So you will be hearing about that soon, early next month. Secondly, we have started quite a large parent outreach program, where we got our SMC members and other parent volunteers, each of them to take charge of 30, 40, 50 children in their locality. And just to call in and visit the parents and to see if everything was okay. If everything was okay in their homes, whether they were having challenges with online classes, whether they've got their worksheets or not. And the interesting thing that happened, that when we managed to create these small networks, when the second wave happened, these actually acted as small communities and support systems for providing medicines, for reaching out to us, helping find hospital beds, for finding ration supplies for families that didn't have ration. And actually our SMC members and other parent volunteers became a bridge for the entire community to be able to solve many of the problems that they're facing. Our outreach teams have now started conducting, we've been talking about how we need to bridge the gap, how students are actually regressing in terms of their learning. While schools have not opened, our parent volunteers and SMC members have started now holding reading melas in the community, so that the students can get back into the gear for learning and for beginning their reading, writing, foundation skills. So I think that the answer is not just in technology, because technology will always, there will always be some access issues. I think we need to be prepared as a society and as a community that how is it that we can prepare support systems, how is it that we can create education champions within communities if we are to face crisis and pandemic situations or any other crisis in years to come. I don't think this is a story of education transformation. This is not just a story of education transformation. For me, this is a story of political will and intent. I think none of the things that we have done in the last 6-7 years, none of them are rocket science. The reality of the matter is that these are all the things that we have talked about. These were all common sense solutions that came from teachers, from principals, from students, from parents. The story is of political will and of a government wanting to bring change. And across the country, one can see that most political parties, most politicians, most MLAs and MPs own and run private schools and colleges. And if the decision makers on public education have their own personal vested interests in private education, if I'm the education minister and I run a chain of private schools, why would I want government schools to improve? And I think this is the crux of the matter. That this, I think, is what I have learned from my journey in all these years as a social activist, as a political activist, as an education researcher, and now as a politician. That if we want the education system of our country to improve, if we want every child to have high quality education, we will first have to change the politics of our country. We will not be able to change the education system without that.